Hi guys, welcome back to Third Eyesight. This is Claudine Packy, Psychic Medium, and this is our third episode. Today's subject is based on attachments, exorcisms, and self-love, all related to mental health. So I thought that I would bring in Michelle Pecoult from Safe Right. Michelle does get called out quite a lot to do a lot of house clearings. She does exorcisms and also does stand-up teachings about this sort of information. I've known her for a little while now, and I really admire the work that she does. The amount of information and knowledge that she does have is just amazing. So for you guys to be able to hear her today with all her wisdom and all her information, I really couldn't hold back, guys, as well. And so I just really went straight into it and started asking her questions because I knew that I wanted to know a lot more information and try and get out as much as I could from her in the short amount of time that I could actually have her today. So let's get straight into it and let's ask her some questions. Don't forget, guys, if you really like the content, hit follow. This is going to be really good stuff. I know it, and I believe the amount of information coming out, we're definitely going to do a part 2 to this. I can just tell right now. So really couldn't wait, guys. Got straight into the questions. So I apologize right now. So let's get straight to it so you guys can listen to all the great information that Michelle provides for us right now. Okay, Michelle, so what do you think would be the different types of attachments or different things that we can see in an attachment from your opinion?
Okay, well, we've been dealing with different attachments and different things involved in the personality or that attack the personality in one way or another. We generally see 3 different types of things going on. Firstly, you can have attachments that are the ones who have deceased, or if there's been trauma in the life of the person, they can actually shatter in psyche, so their soul can be shattered, and you can be looking at alternate personalities. Or there is the worst case scenario where you could have a demonic attachment, and that's actually more common than what people think. So this can happen through curses and different things like that, but we can go through what you can see in the person or what's going on around them to identify what's actually the issue.
So how prevalent is it, like demonic attachments in these days and age? I mean, obviously people have their cultural sides where we curse you, we do all these different things. And so when you're going around and assisting people, how many of these things do you see?
It's far more common than you'd know. Primarily because there are the different cultural things, and we like to say there's too many cooks in the kitchen. So that can actually happen when people are got a foundational belief in a particular religion, then they get involved with or touch on different things and they allow different things in. You can see what we call too many cooks in the kitchen. So demonic powers are pretty territorial. They do like their regions, and as you'd know, coming from different countries and that sort of thing, there's definitely a spirituality to each culture. When you start mixing different things in from different cultures, then you're looking at a problem of basically territorial gods or goddesses or demonic powers trying to take ownership, which can be it can be very harsh, and it is very, very common. I mean, we've got a world now that is so rich spiritually, and that things are vying for position all the time, whether that be in territory, in homes, in families, or over different things. We've got different cultures marrying in, which brings in different different things.
Definitely.
And they don't always sit well together, which is one of the major problems. So it's a lot more rife than what you think. We deal with a lot of demonic attachment. That said, it doesn't look the way people imagine. So people generally think a demon, you're looking at a big hairy monster in the corner. It doesn't necessarily always play out like that. When you're looking at deceased members of the family, or even just deceased holding on, obviously that's going to bring a lot of diversity in the personality as well. It can cause voices, those sorts of things to be happening. It can also have an effect of feeling like you've had past lives, because those ones actually bring their memories, they bring all of those sorts of things into the psyche of man, and it feels so real that it actually becomes a part of us, and we think, okay, that's my past life, when it's not necessarily.
Right, that's interesting. I didn't really actually know that, to be honest with you.
Well, the word reincarnation means to reflesh. It doesn't actually mean to be born anew. It means to literally put on new flesh, like putting on a new coat. Yeah. So reincarnation doesn't necessarily mean that you have had all those past lives, but there's someone who has passed away in history has actually got in and refleshed themselves in your skin.
Yeah.
Which is what reincarnation means.
Look, I guess really being a medium and yourself as well, you go into properties, you meet people and we tune into them, and we, obviously from your perspective, and that's not really what I concentrate, is you see either demonic attachments, and I try and stay clear of that because I don't feel like from an emotional side that I'm probably strong enough to actually work with that energy within the house, or those people that have been attached to a home for so long, or particular items. So for your experience, how do you find when you introduce yourself from the perspective that you're doing as demonic? How do you think that people actually, are they receptive, or do they find it a bit,
It really depends. I mean, I find a lot of people who are feeling like something has gone wrong, they're very receptive to that. It often brings answers in areas for loved ones if they're going through a mental distress, or they're going through what is commonly known now as mental illnesses, and there's nothing that they can do with medication. There's nothing that's actually working. It actually is very well received to hear, okay, this could actually be something else. So we generally have a very good response to that. Going into areas where there's no issues, generally people don't like the sound of it, and it's more coming from a place of fear than it is anything else, to be honest. Generally speaking, we like to tell people, having a demonic attachment or having something attached to you that doesn't belong in your psyche is as common as getting the common cold. Nobody would try to hide or be fearful of the common cold. They'd go to the doctor and they'd do what they need to do. Back in history, that was the way the church used to deal with things. They used to just go in and say, well, I've got this attachment, and they would deal with it. Similarly to going to the doctor.
Yeah.
But there's a massive stigma around it now that, I don't know, I guess people feel like they've done something personally wrong, or there's something horrendous. And let's be honest, the church history is not good.
Yeah.
So therefore they generally think, well, I'm evil, or I've done something to deserve this. That's not necessarily the case. I actually find it much harder to believe that you're paying for something in a past life, and that's why you're suffering like you are, rather than, look, I've caught something here that is as common as a cold.
I mean, I find that people sort of think of it as my energy's not great, like I'm so weak as an individual that they just naturally get attracted to me. I don't really think that that's the case. I think you're just usually in the wrong place at the wrong time, and spiritually and emotionally you're probably in the wrong place at the wrong time, so they sort of tend to gravitate towards you in that sense. But obviously, you walk into houses and people have been living in it, which we were talking about a while ago, that you've been doing some house clearings, and you've had to go through and remove items, you've had to go through and clear people. Can you give us a sort of a scenario where you've had to go through and clear a whole house and what you've experienced through that?
Yeah, sure. We've had a lot of house cleansing type things where the house has had the paranormal activity that you would generally see with the deceased being in there. This has usually not got anything to do with the people living in the house. It's a territorial thing, and our cultures are rich with spirituality, even though I consider Australia to be quite dry in that respect. But yes, we've had situations where there has been the paranormal activity going on. It's gone from the light end of it, so just a little bit of interaction here and there, to an absolute, in honesty, possession. When we're seeing that sort of thing, we generally are not just dealing with one thing or another. There is, through history, there's been a lot of stuff done that is what would generally be called a selling of a soul. And I think that's a major thing that people don't maybe understand, is that the soul is actually the psyche. Right. Psyche and soul is, in Greek, the word soul is psyche, which is where it comes from. And the psyche, man's psyche, is a commodity in the spiritual realm. So generally speaking, if you've got negative energies, if the person's going through a depressive time because they've had a relationship breakdown or something's happened that's a little bit traumatic, spirits can actually feed on that emotion, because all our emotions have a frequency. So this is where they start to actually attach and be able to get in. Sometimes it's as simple as they feel comfortable in that frequency. Yeah. So they actually start feeding on. But that is actually, as I say, a commodity in the spiritual realm. People don't realise that they actually give. They give their souls all the time. Just an interaction like you and I are having now. We're actually there's a soul tie that comes between us. We're friends. Therefore, there's a soul tie, and if it's spiritually speaking, if something gets in, it actually can use the soul ties to start to get a hold. So that's what you're looking at. And as I say, with marriages and all those sorts of things, you're looking at that sort of thing. With houses, generally speaking, the people can be attached to either the room or something's happening, or again, we see like a time loop. They're constantly stuck in whatever it is that happened, which can bring an emotional thing into the house. So it's there as an emotion. Generally, as mediums, we can feel that when we go into the house. You can feel the different emotions. You can feel there's been an upheaval, or sometimes we can feel, there's lots of love in this place that's been there, and that's the nicer end of the job, to go in and go, there's actually everything good here. The lady that's here loved her rose garden out the front, and that's where she basically did it. We say things like, when I die, I'd like to be in my garden, or I'd like to stay with this. And that actually has a binding contract in the spiritual realm. So therefore they can actually be bound to their garden. Then you get someone moving in who's going, we're going to renovate. They rip up the old garden, and the lady's not happy anymore because that's her garden. Then she can start making, just doing small things to alert the people that are there that she's not happy. We've seen that sort of thing quite commonly.
Yeah.
So it really depends on what's going on. More recently, we were called in to do a cleaning of a place which was in the 1800s a mental asylum. As you can imagine, there was a fair bit of energy there. And in some ways, the people stay there because it was their relief. And in other times, it's more like a prison type thing for them. It was a very, very distressing time in their life. So there can be many different energies in there. We also find that demonic powers, because they feed on soul power, they actually can bind and hold the dead in a position of torment to keep that energy.
Yes,
and feed on that.
Sense.
So when we're going in and we're finding that, maybe a medium's been in there and tried to remove the ones that have passed away, but they're actually bound. So they can move them and things can feel like they change, but then they drop back down to that frequency.
So when you're going in there from that sense, you're trying to remove the controlling force or the controlling entity that's controlling the rest. Therefore, the rest of them can be released.
That's exactly right. Yeah, we find that, and we generally get called in last. So generally the people, because we deal with probably what's more the dirty end of the stick, if you like, we'd call ourselves the spiritual janitors.
Makes sense.
We generally go in after they've tried everything else. So they'll have people coming in, they'll do the smudging, they'll do whatever they do to try and remove those things. If they're finding it's a stubborn thing, and you're going back in next time and the same deceased souls are still there and still rattling around, we generally find that there has been a binding in one way or another, that there is a demonic power that will hold those ones there in that emotion. Then we go and we actually remove the demonic power, and then we can deal with the ones who have deceased and release them from that place. So
I've found that a lot of people have claimed to be able to move those demonic spirits on, and I tend not to refer people because I'm like, I don't do it myself. Yep. I don't feel like I have enough energy. I don't think I have enough knowledge in that area. However, I constantly have people coming back going, look, I just paid all this money for someone to do it. So what would you say would be the key skills or an idea for someone if I'm looking for a person to come and clean my house? What would you be looking at?
Well, generally speaking, in history, we've always had what's been called an exorcist. Back way back, even 1600s and even further back than that, the church were primarily the ones that dealt with those sorts of things. Especially when you're dealing with demonic entities, because they're not coming from a good place. So you sort of need to come in with a high authority, which is what we find all the time. You get very well-intentioned people who identify that there's a negative attachment there, or something negative that's more demonic than it is deceased soul. And they tend to try and do things in their own will. They tend to try and do things coming from a place of authority where they actually don't have any authority whatsoever. I personally don't have any authority, but because I am a Christian person who's going, yes, this is the way I'm going to do things. I'm going to do things in the highest power. That is actually what rattles those things and moves those things. You can't go in and say, look, I'm telling you to leave and I banish you. It's just a joke in the demonic realm. Because you're dealing with entities that are very, very ancient.